Imagine walking into a hospital in 1847 and being told the doctors are the ones killing the patients, not through malice, not through incompetence, through their own hands, the same hands they used to save lives an hour earlier on a dead body. Nobody believed it. One man tried to prove it anyway, and it cost him everything, his career, his reputation, and eventually his mind. This is a true story, and it's one of the darkest cases of being right for all the wrong rewards in the history of medicine. Vienna, 1840s. The city's general hospital ran one of the busiest maternity clinics in Europe, split into two separate wards. Ward 1 was staffed by doctors and medical students. Ward 2 was staffed by midwives. On paper, they treated the exact same patients in the exact same building under the exact same conditions. But the death rates were nothing alike. In Ward 1, roughly 1 in every 5 to 6 women who gave birth died shortly after from a violent, fast-moving fever that swept through the ward in waves. In Ward 2, the death rate was closer to 1 in 50. Word got around. Pregnant women in Vienna began begging to be admitted to the midwives' ward instead. Some women, terrified of Ward 1, chose to give birth in the street rather than risk the doctor's side of the hospital, and their odds of survival actually improved because of it. A hospital ward was more dangerous than the street outside it, and for years nobody could explain why. Enter Ignaz Semmelweis, a young Hungarian doctor, newly assigned to Ward 1, and by most accounts obsessive to the point of exhausting the people around him. He started keeping meticulous records, comparing the two wards, shift by shift, practice by practice, searching for the one variable that was different. He ruled out overcrowding. Both wards were similarly full. He ruled out climate, diet, even the position women gave birth in. Nothing lined up. And then, in 1847, a colleague of his died, a fellow doctor named Jakub Kolečka, who'd been accidentally cut by a student's scalpel during an autopsy. Kolečka's death spread through his body in a way that looked disturbingly familiar. The same fever, the same violent decline, the same pattern Semmelweis had been watching kill new mothers for years. Except Kolečka had never given birth. He'd performed an autopsy. That was the detail that changed everything. Semmelweis realized the doctors on Ward 1 were doing something the midwives never did, performing autopsies each morning on women who died overnight, then walking straight to the delivery room to examine living patients without washing their hands in between. He theorized that something invisible was being carried on the doctor's hands, from the dead to the living. He called them cadaverous particles. He had no microscope powerful enough to prove they existed. Germ theory, as we understand it today, wouldn't be developed for another 2 decades. All he had was a pattern and a horrifying hypothesis, that the doctors themselves, the most trusted men in the building, were the ones spreading death from room to room. In May of 1847, Semmelweis made hand-washing mandatory before every delivery, not with plain water, but with a chlorinated lime solution strong enough to strip the smell of the autopsy room from the skin. The results were almost immediate. Within a month, the death rate on Ward 1 dropped from nearly 18% to around 2%, falling in line with the midwives' ward for the first time in the hospital's history. He had solved it. He had the data, the timeline, the mechanism, and a solution that worked immediately and repeatedly, and almost nobody wanted to hear it. Here's the part that's hard to accept, even now. Semmelweis wasn't rejected because his results were wrong. He was rejected because of what his results implied. He was telling some of the most respected doctors in Vienna that they, personally, had been killing their patients for years, with their own hands, unknowingly, over and over. That wasn't a scientific finding to them. It was an accusation. There was no accepted mechanism yet to explain why washing hands would matter, no germs to point to under a microscope, nothing but Semmelweis insisting on a practice that felt, to his colleagues, like an insult dressed up as medicine. He struggled to explain himself clearly. He grew frustrated, then combative, then openly hostile toward doctors who doubted him. writing furious letters accusing colleagues of being, in his words, irresponsible murderers. The more he pushed, the more the medical establishment closed ranks against him. His contract at the Vienna hospital wasn't renewed. He moved back to Budapest, still convinced he was right, still trying to force the world to listen. Over the next several years, his behavior grew more erratic. Friends and colleagues described violent mood swings, disorganized thinking, and a growing obsession with the idea that his enemies were conspiring against him. Whether that decline came from years of professional rejection, an undiagnosed condition, or something else entirely, historians still debate. What isn't in question is what happened next. In 1865, Semmelweis was lured to an asylum in Vienna under false pretenses and forcibly committed. He tried to leave. Guards restrained him. Some accounts describe a severe beating during the struggle. 2 weeks later, he was dead. At just 47 years old, the official cause was an infected wound, likely from the injury sustained during his confinement. A slow, spreading infection, eerily similar to the very disease he'd spent his career trying to stop. The man who tried to teach the world that dirty hands could kill quietly died from an infection nobody bothered to treat properly. He never lived to see himself proven right. Within 20 years of his death, Louis Pasteur's germ theory gave the scientific world the missing piece. Semmelweis never had an actual explanation for why his methods worked. Joseph Lister built on that foundation to pioneer antiseptic surgery, and hand-washing became standard medical practice worldwide. Today, his name survives in a term psychologists still use: the Semmelweis reflex, the instinct to reject new evidence immediately and completely, simply because it contradicts what we already believe. So here's the takeaway. Being right isn't always enough. Semmelweis had the data. He had the results. He had lives saved in writing month after month. What he didn't have was a way to make people believe him before the cost of not believing him became unbearable. The next time something sounds too uncomfortable to be true, it's worth asking, are we doubting the evidence, or are we just doubting what it would mean about us if it were real?